What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so it's been a couple weeks since we made one of these theory videos. Largely it's because last week was Memorial Day weekend, and I figured people were just kind of hanging out and about and going out with friends and family, and I was back in Lexington and so on and so forth. But I want to talk about the Enigma Force, specifically in relation to like Ant-Man and Wasp and Avengers 4, because Ant-Man and Wasp could actually bring that in. They could bring the Enigma Force and Captain Universe into the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Avengers 4. Now, would the Enigma Force and Captain Universe turn the tide, right? Like if Captain Universe showed up in Avengers 4, would Captain Universe be able to like single-handedly defeat, Thanos or something like that? Absolutely not. Like probably not. I mean, Captain Universe has always been a cool concept, but Captain Universe's powers are relative. Like they're not an absolute thing. And so because of that, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, right? You have to sort of just roll with it and see what happens and just kind of hopefully things turn out cool. When it comes to the Enigma Force itself, though, that goes all the way back to 1977. 1978, I think it was, with Micronauts number 8. So, a little bit of history here. Back in the 1970s at Marvel Comics, it was pretty much just write whatever you want to, right? I mean, like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby had created a bunch of superheroes and brought back some superheroes with their inauguration of Marvel Comics, such as it was in the 1960s. And that in turn led to like this huge proliferation of characters like superheroes from DC and Marvel, and everybody was creating all different kinds of stuff. Well, because of the success of what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby had done in the 1970s, when you had Jim Shooter as editor-in-chief, there were a bunch of things that went on. One was securing comic books based on toy lines, right? So you had like, you had Larry, I don't think it was Larry Hama, but you had like one of the editors-in-chief or one of the editors or whoever it was, basically brought on board like G.I. Joe. And then you had like the Secret Wars, which was, the original Secret Wars was designed to be a story that could showcase the most popular characters in Marvel Comics. And that was designed to secure a toy deal from Mattel. So there were a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes. But what ended up happening is, if Les Daniels, the comic book historian is to be believed, what ended up happening is one of the writers at the time, Bill Mantlo, which I believe this predates his run on The Incredible Hulk, but I could be wrong. But Bill Mantlo had actually, like his son was opening up a present or something like that. It was like Micronauts, these little toys they made back in the day. And Bill Mantlo wanted to write comics based on those toys for his son. And so Jim Shooter was like, whatever, man, go with it. Just do whatever you want to do. And so Bill Mantlo gave us Micronauts. And Micronauts was largely standalone, right? It was basically by itself. I mean, it took place inside the Marvel Universe, but it didn't really cross over with the rest of the Marvel Universe. I mean, it did to a degree, but not in the capacity of like Fantastic Four, X-Men, Avengers, different things like that. Like, you really wouldn't see the Micronauts team up. Now, that changed in like 1987 with Fantastic Four 282, which was a tie-in for the second Secret Wars event that was basically capitalizing on the first one, really the most popular of the iterations, if you don't take into account the modern day version, which is kind of a continuation, kind of not. But because of that, what ended up happening here is the Fantastic Four actually traveled to the microverse. And that's when you basically learn a lot of what goes on behind the scenes in terms of accessing the microverse by mainline superheroes. And so what you have is you have the main Marvel universe, right? Like the huge universe in its entirety. You have Thanos and Guardians of the Galaxy and the Kree and the Skrulls and all these different things, the Shi'ar Empire and the X-Men, Avengers, Fantastic Four. You have all those things. Inside of the Marvel Universe, on an exceedingly small microscopic level, is a whole other universe called the Microverse. Now, the only way that I know of, and I'm pretty sure the Fantastic Four established this outside of mystical means, like if you were Doctor Strange, but the only way to really really access this is to shrink down using PIM particles and then enter into the microverse. Now, you'd have to shrink down at an astronomically small level because you're talking about a microscopic universe, and then the citizens inside that universe are even smaller than that. So, I mean, you'd have to shrink down to an exceedingly minuscule level. But it did introduce the idea that like the microverse could cross over into the main Marvel Universe. And the Micronauts and the Microverse were pretty popular. I mean, the series ran for 59 issues, which is, even for back then, is a pretty lengthy stint for a series if it wasn't very popular. I mean, Marvel doesn't really, like back then, they don't really do what they do now. Like nowadays in Marvel Comics, if a series doesn't sell, they just cancel it. They don't really hand it over to a new writer, they just get rid of it. And so because that, it's kind of the lazy way to handle stories. But back then, they would just hand the story over to somebody else and just say, here, you write it. And that's how you got things like Bill Mantlo and Peter David's Incredible Hulk run. That's how you got things like Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, is they would just give it to a different writer and the writer would just work wonders with it. But with regards to the idea of the Enigma Force, really the Captain Universe concept premiered in Micronauts number 8. And so all we really knew is that the Enigma Force can possess a person. And that's it. That's all we really knew. But going forward after Fantastic Four 282 and running up into the modern day, the expansion of the Enigma Force and the expansion of the role of Captain Universe, while it hasn't been the biggest thing ever, it's certainly shed a lot more light on what goes on. And so the way this works is the microverse is quote unquote powered by the Enigma Force, but Marvel's never explained it, hence the name. Marvel doesn't really say the purpose the Enigma Force serves outside of providing an energy source basically for the microverse. They don't really say how it relates to like eternity, for example, in the main Marvel universe. They don't really say any of that stuff. They just say like the Enigma Force is there. And the idea is that in times of great need, which is to say an event that endangers the entirety of the universe, because the microverse is part of the main Marvel universe, if the main Marvel universe were to be destroyed, the microverse would be destroyed along with it. And so in response to that, because the Enigma Force exists to basically protect itself to ensure its own survival, what it'll do is it'll leave the microverse, or at least allow a facsimile of itself to leave the microverse, and then a portion of that power will be bestowed onto an individual, and they'll become Captain Universe. Now, the role of Captain Universe has waxed and waned over the years, and the way that Marvel makes this work is they say that for the most part, there's never really an instance where like a baseline human with no powers will become Captain Universe. It's happened on a couple of occasions actually, but it's not something you see happen all the time. Instead, it's a way to actually just kind of tell a fun story with a superhero. For example, there was one point where Spider-Man got the Enigma Force and punched the Incredible Hulk into the atmosphere. So like that was cool. That was actually a pretty cool event. Spider-Man was totally amazed by like how much power he had. But by and large, the Enigma Force possesses your standard gamut of superheroes, superpowers rather. Super strength, speed, durability, flight, different things like that, channeling cosmic energies, but it's not always the same. What the Enigma Force will usually do is when a person bonds with the Enigma Force, it will basically enhance their abilities, and that's really about it. By and large, when a person is given the Enigma Force, it's like Univision, basically allowing them to essentially see things on a subatomic scale, and then like some measure of cosmic awareness, depending on how Marvel wants to tell the story. But again, it really waxes and wanes. For example, most recently in Marvel Comics, during the events of Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, we got a new Captain Universe. And she was just kind of like, you guys are screwed. Like there's nothing you guys can do to stop the collapse of the multiverse because, you're dealing with powers way beyond your ability to comprehend, which of course was revealed to be the Ivory Kings, who wiped out all of the cosmic entities, destroyed the Living Tribunal, and then Doctor Doom destroyed them using the Molecule Man Owen Reese, or at least like 15 versions of Molecule Man Owen Reese, stole their power, created a battle world, and became gods. So like it gets kind of crazy when you get into that whole like God King Doom and all that kind of crazy stuff. But the cool thing about rolling over Captain Universe into the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, again, you can basically have a set of events whereby Ant-Man and Wasp, for whatever reason, end up shrinking down into the microverse. And because Thanos wiped out half the life in the universe in Infinity War, you can push that into the microverse and say half of their population is gone as well. And so where they're trying to figure it out, in response to the crisis, the Enigma Force basically sends a facsimile of itself to the main Marvel Cinematic Universe, which picks a new host, and that person becomes Captain Universe. I wouldn't really see it being something that would turn the tide, right? Like I don't really see it being like a Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel-esque sort of situation where like she shows up on the scene and the day is saved, which is apparently what they're going to be going for in the film. From what I see, I could just see it as like introducing a new concept. And that's the way it was in Marvel. Like you didn't see Captain Universe all that often. You might see a host for Captain Universe, and they would be a host for like a year in Marvel Comics, but I think overall there's probably been like 7 maybe Captain Universes. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's been like less than 20. Like it's not been that many people. It's not something you see all the time. So again, it'd be kind of cool. I think it'd be interesting just to sort of have a new character thrown in there, not really for the sake of having them, but for, at the very least, expanding on the existing roster. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Those of you guys who are familiar with Captain Universe, let me know. If you're not familiar, we could probably do a discussion, but in reality, what you've seen here is really all there is to know. At this point, you're just breaking it down into like who was Captain Universe, when they were Captain Universe, and why they played that role. And even in the case of Spider-Man, just who possessed the Enigma Force, because Spider-Man didn't actually become Captain Universe as far as I'm aware. It was just Spider-Man with the Enigma Force, which was kind of cool. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. And yeah, if you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.